Hi, this is Brett Cenkus with Cenkus Law in Brayton Woods. Cenkus Law is a business law firm. We do a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We do capital raising, securities law compliance. We do just about any contract you're going to run into is in our wheelhouse. We do a little bit of dispute work and litigation. Brayton Woods is an M&A advisor. It's an investment bank or business broker. It's a marketing and sales, primarily service, to help companies, mainly sellers of companies, find buyers for their business. This video is a question I get asked quite a bit, probably because I've been out of law school for 22 years and a little over half that time I've been a lawyer, but close to half that time I've been in other roles. Corporate finance, venture capital, and M&A on the buy side as a deal person. So I think it's sort of a natural question for people to ask me, and that's, should you get a JD-MBA or the value of a joint degree? I'm going to give you seven reasons that the top 7 reasons I can think of that you would do that, and a couple of the drawbacks to it. And this is I'm going to do this for business students who think, should I also get a JD? Although that's not super common, I don't think. Part of the reason is because you're going from 2 to 4 years, so it's twice as much program. And also I think that people who are sort of bent towards law school, naturally, I think they're curious and intellectual, and to have a little more schooling makes some sense. But the idea that your typical business student would be interested in going to learn the law seems less likely to me. And the third reason, I guess, why it's less common is because it doesn't do you any good if you want to be a business person. Really, fundamentally, the legal side of things doesn't do you that much good. And the reason for that is because what you learn in law school, it just kind of, everyone says that it takes, you just don't learn how to be a lawyer in law school. You just don't. And what you learn is the theory of law. You learn black letter law, they call it. But you don't learn how to practice, how to really do the job. And look, at any field, you're going to be better once you get experience, right? It's hard to teach anyone to be amazing in the classroom, but law is particularly unique like that. I think you can learn marketing strategy, you can learn how to dissect a financial statement, you can learn a lot of the business school things in school. Again, you'll be better when you put them to actual practical use, but you can learn the content. All the world's knowledge is at everyone's fingertips now, right? We can all get it, but really learning how to be a corporate lawyer, that is hard. And it takes years, and it's very rare. We have a first-year lawyer working with us right now, and I have said to him a number of times, it's hard. It's difficult for me to measure where you're at. I'm trying to give feedback. We're trying to be very intentional about it, but it's just hard to know because he knows so little, right? And first-year lawyers don't really add that much value, and it's not because he's not a bright guy or anything. It's just it really takes a while to get good at the job. Anyway, so but we will talk about this. Business students who want to add on a JD, or litigators who want to get a business degree. But it's mainly, I think, this question comes from people who are going to law school, want to be corporate lawyers, and think, should I also get an MBA? Now, I briefly thought about this. The reason I went to law school instead of business school, I describe myself as a lawyer, business person trapped in a lawyer's body at times. And I love law now, but when I was going into law school and even coming out, I wasn't really excited to be a lawyer. I like business strategy. It's really where I like to spend my time. It's just really enjoyable to think about entrepreneurial endeavors and how things happen and work, and financial statements. I'm very comfortable with numbers and all that sort of thing. But I didn't really spend that much time looking at it, partly because at the time I didn't think I had a great shot at getting into a good business school. I didn't have enough experience. But that's going to bring us to point number 1, or reason number 1 that you should consider JD-MBA. Now, this is the one reason that I'm not so sure about. But I do hear people think that it's easier or helps them to get into one of the 2 programs if they've been accepted into the other. And so, for example, if I look back at my time, I wanted to go to graduate school because I had a really difficult job search coming out of undergrad. My economics degree at Messiah College was just not well known or respected out of the immediate area. It was tough, and eventually landed a job at Bloomberg Financial Markets, and it was a great job, but remember thinking, oh, this is how the game's played, and look, I guess I want to get a degree that opens up doors, right? That really was my motivation. And with 1 year at Bloomberg, there's no way I was getting into a top MBA program, but I got into a great law school. Maybe, if I applied for the business school, it would have helped me get in at that point in time. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that really does work, but I've definitely heard it from people that they believe that that's the case. And so, it's something to consider. That's reason number one. Reasons number 2 and 3 are connected. They're about your classmates. So reason number 2 is you will have greater connections. You'll meet a lot more people. Now, you meet people in the workplace, if that's you spend an extra year in the workplace, but the number of people you meet that are like-minded and similar and going to do things, I guess it depends on a JD-MBA. If you're just a lawyer, if you practice law the whole time, your business students, school students aren't doing the same things, but they'll be able to feed your business. They're great connections. My time at Harvard Law School, I've just got an amazing network and people who are really accomplished and driven, and that's really super valuable. And you could have that at 2 different schools, and that's attractive. Again, you can meet people traveling the world, you can meet people in 1 more year of work, but I think in terms of meeting classmates who are like-minded, going through a similar experience together in a unique setting, having 1 more year in school makes some sense. Now, reason 3 is also related to the people, and that is your classmates. If you do a JD-MBA, you're going to get 2 quite different classmates. So, maybe the grand scheme of things as compared to people in other countries or something, maybe they're, more similar than I think. But, I always found, and I think that law students tend to be much more intellectual, much more interested in, sort of the detail-oriented kind of things and debating and arguing and things of that nature. And business students are just much more sort of entrepreneurial and driven. It's not to say they don't want to turn over business ideas and argue and debate them and things like that. But when I found that law students were a little bit nerdier, a little bit more intellectual, and if that's what and they will challenge you more. I think the bar for saying something, how well you've thought about it and how well you can defend it is higher in law school. I always say I think I learned a lot more from my friends and colleagues and peers sort of than I did in the classroom. That may or may not be true, but it was just, you just don't throw something out in those circles that isn't, thought through, because people are going to jump on it. Yeah, why do you say that? What are you thinking? And it can be annoying to people. It can be annoying to my wife when I do it, but we're just trained to be, and we're all built to be kind of analytical and attack things and tear them apart. And that doesn't mean it's just always debating and being difficult. It's just, I really enjoy that process. I enjoy looking at things and thinking, why are they doing it like that? Should they do it like that? And just insatiably curious about the world and how it works. And I think that law students are more in that vein. Now, when I was in law school, though, I really wanted to be at the business school, and I wanted to be having a beer and talking about entrepreneurial endeavors and things like that, rather than whether or not there's going to be movement in this case or that case, and who's your favorite Supreme Court justice. I can name a few more than I could back then, but it was never really, I sort of never really geeked out on the law per se. Now, 22 years later, I am more so than I ever would have thought I would have been really interested in kind of nerdy and geeking out about legal things, particularly when it comes to contract drafting and being better at my craft. But back then, I really wanted to talk about entrepreneurial activities and things of that nature and bat those around. So I think you've got sort of different people in the world, a different level of sort of curiosity, a different level of sort of driven and motivated, and philosophically probably a little bit differently bent. So you've got a very different set of people that you can rub elbows with on any given day. So that's of some value. Don't worry, I'm going to get to a couple of the reasons that I think most people checking out this video who ask this question are really after, which is, are you going to make more money and more opportunity? I will get to those, I promise. Number 4, the extra year gives you more time to see things, to pivot, to figure out what you like. If you are really interested in business, really interested in law, not sure what you want to do, that extra year could be valuable for that. Of course, it could be valuable if you just take time off and think about what you want to do with your life. But there's some value in that. I think you've got one more sort of summer program to take a look at different sort of different field or company or something of that nature. Number 5, and this should apply for everyone, we're quickly getting to the end, all these first 4 and this one hold true, I believe, for business students who want to think about the JD and litigators who want to think about getting a business degree. The last 2 are going to really be mainly in the vein of a corporate lawyer who wants to get an MBA. But number 5 is just general self-fulfillment and self-improvement and wanting to learn more about more. So, I often thought I'd go back and get another degree again, and was applying for schools just about 5 years ago. People thought I was nuts, and I'm not sure I won't do that again. I sort of got sidetracked and decided at the time it didn't make sense, but I view myself as a lifelong learner, so going back into a classroom and doing an MBA right now, I think would be amazing. And just the idea of just studying all that stuff and thinking about it, I'm very process driven, and I think I'd really, really enjoy that. So you might just, if you got the luxury of being able to do it, and you're someone who's going to be learning for their whole life, and you're really interested in things, there's a self-fulfillment piece there. So reasons 6 and 7, and these I said earlier are really the reasons I think most people are really what they're probably after when they ask this question, and they relate to whether or not you have more career opportunities and make more money. Okay, so reason number 6, will you be a better lawyer if you get an MBA? And so let's just check off the idea that will you be a better business person if you get a JD? The answer to that is no. I mean, it is just, I said earlier, it's so difficult it takes time to be a good lawyer. Coming out of law school and never practicing, if all you want to do is go into business strategy or consulting or investment banking or entrepreneurial endeavors, getting a law degree, it's just not going to be that valuable. It really isn't. I think it's just too much. It's too dense. It's too hard to put that knowledge to any sort of practical work. It doesn't really make sense unless you're committed to practicing for some period of time. And litigators who want to get an MBA, I don't think it does much for their job either. Litigators, if they're commercial litigators and they run into business situations a lot, it will have some tangential use, but it's not every day in and day out. The role of a litigator, the job of a litigator is not, it's not that numbers driven. It's not that much about strategy and things. Again, I know I'm getting comments about this. There are cases and there's situations where it would become valuable, but not compared to a corporate lawyer. Because a corporate lawyer, this is reason number 6 as it applies to a corporate lawyer, the job of a transactional lawyer, so a lot of what I do, that's mergers and acquisitions and securities and things like that, it really is very business heavy. And even if I'm drafting a contract for a client, my ability to speak business and understand business, which was definitely my first language. I grew up around small business, and I just was really geeky about it my whole life, reading Inc. magazine and every book I could read, and just super interested in my coursework all along. I mean, I just loved entrepreneurial activity, business strategy. I love numbers and finance. I mean, just really, that was right in my wheelhouse. So those things come naturally to me. If they didn't, taking courses around those things I think would help. They'd make you more comfortable with the content. And I see that with lawyers that I work with. If they haven't had any business experience, haven't run businesses, they're not naturally bent that way, don't think that language, it can show. It can show, there's no question. So if those things don't come naturally to you, spending time in the business school curriculum, I think, will be helpful. Doesn't mean it necessarily will turn you into a business person or really fix deficiencies in terms of thinking about financial, for numbers in particular, but I think it would absolutely help and give people confidence around concepts that they're not necessarily familiar with. And that is a big part of a corporate lawyer's job. Now, we don't spend that much. I mean, it's not like day in and day out I'm knee-deep in financial statements, although it's part of it. And that comes up, by the way, in litigation. If you're doing business litigation, in discovery and analyzing what's going on can definitely come up there. But in transactional work, it comes up, enough. And definitely when it comes to just contracts, understanding how businesses operate and what's going on, like that familiarity. Now, again, I wonder how much of it's from self-learning around these topics and from being involved in launching entrepreneurial ventures and things. But there's no question it will help some. And it will help if you never do anything outside of the classroom, right? So unlike the someone who's getting their MBA and thinks, why don't I get a JD? It's not going to be of that much actual value. But I think someone who wants to be a corporate lawyer and gets an MBA, it definitely will have quite a bit of value. So the seventh reason, though, is it will help you get more, make more money, have more job opportunities, things of that nature. So starting with the MBA student who wants to get a JD, I think the answer is clearly no. It just isn't. I don't think most people looking at that are when you go to McKinsey to apply to be a consultant or Goldman Sachs to be an investment banker or wherever, I don't think they look at that and think much of it. I think that people who have a lot of perspective in the world understand that if you never practiced, it doesn't do you any good. They might also wonder, why would you do that? It's not that typical of someone who's like a business student to think about bolting on a JD. It's just a Juris Doctor, a law degree. It's not. So I don't think it's going to do you that much good. Litigators, I think same thing, really. It's like, I just don't think it's close enough to the job and it matters that much. Corporate lawyers, yeah, I think it matters. I think there is a perception that someone who has that MBA, especially from a great school, it can speak business a little bit better, is more interested in business. The things they would learn in the classroom can directly translate into the job. They don't need to necessarily go practice, be a business person or run their own company for those things to translate and add some value. So I think there's definitely a perception of value there. Will the joint degree help you switch fields or move into other areas more easily? Broadly speaking, no, not for business students who might want to go into law, which seems like that would be really rare to go spend a couple years in business and then want to transition into law, and I think it'd be pretty difficult for a bunch of reasons. Litigators, I think their path into business is much tougher than a corporate person's, and I don't know that the MBA will help all that much. And for a corporate person, I think it would help a little bit, but I think that they really probably need to, it's just hard to imagine it's the thing that really swings it at that point. After you get out for a few years, your coursework matters less anyway. And if you're trying to go into business, you're always up against this thing that you've been a lawyer and you chose law and all that. It makes it hard if the environment isn't, if the job market isn't good or you don't have some real connections or something going for you. I made a jump from law into venture capital and corporate development or M&A, doing deals, finding companies to buy for a public company. But it was during .com 1.0 and the market was great. There was just a lot of jobs, and I've got friends who jumped into consulting, investment banking then. It's not to say you can't do it at other times, but good job markets, you've got more opportunity, and I don't think, it'll help, I guess, again, at the margin, right? It won't hurt, but it could help a little bit. I think after you've been out a couple of years, recruiters are spending less time looking at your coursework anyway. And again, you've sort of chosen a space, so I think you need other compelling reasons to be able to jump. Will it help you if, like me, you went to law school just because you could get into a good school, but you really wanted to be a business person, let's say, and I was thinking I wanted to go to investment banking at the time. So would it help you do that as opposed to being a straight up law student? Yeah, I think it will. I think it will help a corporate lawyer someone who doesn't really know what they want to do, going to law school, maybe thinking they don't want to be a lawyer at all, but they could get into a good school. I think it would help that person quite a bit. I think the interview process will be much easier. I think they've made a decision. I think will help them a lot, because I think it's just there's more opportunity to get into those fields from the business school. Goldman Sachs and McKinsey and all them came and interviewed on our campuses, but I think they had fewer spots available just per capita, if you will, than over at the business school. And I think that they're always trying to figure out, do you just not want to be a lawyer? Do you really love this kind of work? And I think that doing an MBA on top of the JD would say a lot at that point in the process, and also give you opportunities to different summer experiences. So I think there's some value to that, for sure. So those are the 7 big ones. Give you a couple quick drawbacks. One is hard cost, obviously, more money. Opportunity cost, a lost year. I have heard that some of the law firms pay bonuses or they give salary increases sometimes for someone who's got a JD on top, or an MBA on top of their JD. I've never actually seen that for sure from a law firm, but I've heard a lot about that on Above the Law and places like that. I mean, you just hear people talking about that. So I think that may be a thing to mitigate at least the cost, the hard cost and the opportunity cost. Hard cost, really, that's a hard cost thing, but maybe make it a little bit easier to accept those drawbacks. And then there's also, I would say the third one is a kind of flight risk issue. I think that you may be up, and I've heard that you're up against a little bit more challenge going into law firms because they think, will you stick around? So I've said that I think it doesn't really necessarily help to have the MBA to move out of law. Again, it probably helps a little bit, but not enough to really swing a decision to get that degree, I would say. But there's no question that you're sending a message to people. That's why I think it's easier to get probably a summer experience or get a job right out of law school as a business person in investment banking, in consulting, and something like that. Because you're telling them something about what you've chosen to do. And similarly, if you go into a law, I think there might be a little bit of a raised eyebrow about whether or not you really want to be a lawyer. And so you might say, well, why would I be being a lawyer? Why would I be applying for legal jobs if I didn't want to be a lawyer? Well, the reason is because of what I said earlier, which is you're not going to have really any practical value to your degree from a knowledge standpoint. Not your law degree, if you don't practice law for some period of time. You just will not. I mean, that is just, you might remember a case here and there, you might have some sort, but you're just so inundated with information in law school, and it's just so different to be a lawyer than it is to learn about the law. So I do think there's some people who do a joint degree and think, well, I should go put in some time and be a lawyer for a couple of years and then make a jump. And that's not a terrible way to think if you put the time in and gone through. If you spent all that time to get your JD, to not practice at all, again, I've got plenty of friends and colleagues who did it that way, but to spend a couple of years and really make that experience have a value from a knowledge standpoint long term makes a lot of sense. So it would make sense to me that recruiters and people at law firms might be a little bit concerned. I think if you go to a great school and if you're a smart, sharp person, you do well at that school and all that, it's not going to make much difference. And certainly not a reason, I don't think, to swing a decision to do it or not do it. But I do hear about that. So I think that's about it. This video is a little longer than I thought it would be, but I've been wanting to get these things out on the table. Hopefully you found some value in all of that. I'm interested in what you think. A couple of things I talked about and said I haven't been able to confirm these, about bonuses for having an MBA on top of a JD, or the dual degree helping get into one or the other of the schools that you went to. If you have any experience with those things, firsthand knowledge of them, if they're true or not true, I would love to hear about that. So please drop a comment below the video, and thanks for stopping by today.